right, I'm Peter Nyboer. I'm from Livid Instruments. We make, if you're not familiar with us, is anybody here familiar with us? Not familiar? Okay, well, we're a small company in Austin. I'm in San Jose, actually. And we make controllers. We've been doing this for about 10 years. We have lots of different things. This is probably the easiest way to show it, just at our store. Controllers, hey. So I've got here with me the base, which is 32 velocity-sensitive pads, 9 touch faders, 8 touch buttons, and then 8 buttons over here. So it's part of our tradition of making sort of blank slate controllers. There's no labels on them. They work just sort of out of the box with a lot of different software, but then people can kind of mangle them however they want, reprogram them, script them, do what they want. We try to support a lot of different things. Ableton Live has been one of our biggest customers. We also do a lot of stuff with Reason. And we've been growing into other aspects. Once Bitwig was announced, we were like, oh, this looks really cool. Looks like a nice sort of branch from Ableton when we first saw it. And we eventually got on the beta and started fleshing out some of the ideas that we had sort of already started with Live, but then we had some different opportunities to do different things in Bitwig for reasons both technical, that we had to do them differently, and then also just because it was the software wasn't released yet. We could work closely with the team. We could make suggestions for the API. We're like, hey, well, we really want to do this with our controller. It's a really great feature. And they'd be like, oh, that is a nice idea. So then they could build that stuff in. And so what I want to show you is the fruits of those labors. So I'm going to be showing the bass, which has a lot of the things that we do with sequencing, clip triggering, being able to play instruments. We have some other things like the Control R, which is sort of, we have a couple other much larger controllers. But you get the idea. They're much more comprehensive surfaces than these smaller ones that I brought. And then we have the Ohm RGB, which is sort of our flagship. It's sort of the form factor that we came out with like a long time ago and have sort of evolved, and that's this one that has the big 64 button grid in the middle and it has some pots and sliders. And again, it has like all those buttons. It's really great for triggering lots of clips or lots of button-based effects, things like that. So it's really kind of up to you what you want to do with them, but we have a lot of shared features between what we can do on the bass and what we can do on these other controllers. So that's just sort of an overview of our product line. And then for those total nerds, we also have a lot of DIY stuff. So you can build your own controllers. I shouldn't say nerds, the inventive people. So we sell lots of parts, and we have some different configurations for being able to build your own controller. So that's sort of an overview of where we're coming from. And so here's something that I've been doing in Bitwig. My style is not as well rehearsed. I haven't been doing this for a month and a half. I've been working on this for the past several months, so I'm kind of have like messy hair and So the first thing you do when you plug in your bass, and really sort of any of our controllers, is you fire it up and just sort of select it as a controller, or just say, hey, find it for me and detect available controllers, and it finds it. Great. So once that's done, it looks at what's in the set and populates. So you can see this is the clip grid view, and I can go ahead and I think I have something playing here already. Thank you. Oh, wow. I've got some stuff that's soloed and muted. What do I do? So we have a lot of things that are sort of momentary to really expand the controller beyond its sort of footprint that it takes on your desk. So I can hold this down, and now I have all my track controls. And I can take this solo off. And can go ahead and sort of start triggering some different clips. Maybe I want to kill the clips over here so I can stop all clips. Bring up the volumes with these sliders. I can bring up different tracks and see what I have in them by selecting my tracks over here. Wow, things are really slow right now. Oh, it's probably the screen capture. This is sort of an old Mac. Anyway, so all right, well, it is what it is. So that's kind of obvious. Triggering clips, volume controls. I got shift so I can, mute tracks, solo tracks, and stop clips and arm recording if I care to. Though it sort of auto arms as you change your track. So you're ready to play stuff. And you can play stuff in these other modes. 2 and 3 and 4 are where a lot of your creation is going to happen. Mode 2 is sends and returns mode. So here we've got, in this case, we have an instrument, in this case, a synth, Over here we have a drum kit, so hopefully you can see, yeah, that comes out pretty well on the screen. Now it matches up to being a drum kit. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the playback so we can... We got a nice big 32 drum kit here. If we want to, we can actually access more sounds by transposing and going to different banks. I'll get to that in a little bit. Now if we go to a synth, now we have sort of an isomorphic keyboard, so that's probably not the best example, but all my weird sounds. Do I have anything that's sort of normal? Probably not. There we go. Now we just go up fourths, but we can change that if we want to. Again, just sort of, it's a plastic keyboard. We can, plastic meaning not in its construction, but in its sort of ability to transform. So I can change that sort of vertical spacing. You can see my root keys. Well, I think you can see that. My root keys are changing and the interval is changing as we proceed up. And we can also have like lots of different scales and things like that too. And you can see that it's telling us as we change it what scale we're on. Major, minor, what our vertical separation is here. Vertical offset. And then we can also transpose to go up to higher or lower sounds. And so that's sort of sends in a nutshell. And then if you select an audio track, so on this track, 7th track, I have a bunch of clips loaded, so then it just sort of turns into a clip grid automatically. So it adapts to the context of the track to give you the things you need on your pads. So I have, let me go ahead and start this clip again. And here's another neat feature. I can go ahead and hold this down and get my clip grid back just by temporarily holding down this top button. It sort of puts you back in mode 1. Oh, hey, this is going to be tricky. So there we go. You can see how it just transforms to the clip grid there. And I have some sends here. And then I can go ahead and, send it to everything and then just affect the return volumes down here. So these would be the complete effects tracks that we have laid out here on the far right of our session. So yeah, I've got 6 effects tracks over here, and you can see those represented in my sends here. Okay, so where was I? I had shown you the basic clip launching, some of the features where we can, hold down things momentarily and get things that we need very quickly. It's going to be virtually impossible to show you the sequencing this way, but we can try. So I'm going to go ahead and just go to an empty clip and create a new one, and let's go ahead and launch that. All right, so this should be active. And that is my active clip. All right, great. So now we have a step sequencer. So it's really much easier in practice than it is when you're trying to troubleshoot your computer. Okay, so again, it's very basic. So I've got a basic beat going here. So that's pretty simple. What if we wanted to do something, maybe we could do something a little bit longer. We can actually lengthen this clip out a little bit so we can take a look at the clip. It's just entering in MIDI notes here. Let's go to our inspector and make this 4 bars. And so now it's going ahead and running. So there's a couple different features that we can access here. Holding down, again, Shift key. So I can turn follow mode off. I can select a measure here. And again, you notice these things sort of happen without labels or information. And that might be a little bit daunting at first, but once you start practicing with it, it becomes very second nature. And it kind of frees you up to do a lot of other things too. So we can see that it's focused on, which measure it's focused on. I can go ahead and add this to the 4th measure now. And as it comes around, but I could also engage follow mode, so it's just always sort of keeping me in step with whatever measure is happening. So, and I'm just sort of punching in things randomly here. And maybe actually that's not such a bad idea. Because one of the things that I like about Bitwig is that you can actually discover things quite readily. And we can get to that a little bit later in another track that I have. So then here's another sort of weird feature that we have. We have what's called flip mode. So this is a sort of step sequencing on its head, and this is probably better explained in a track where we have like an instrument, where we're using an instrument. So I'm going to go ahead and create a clip. And what we do here, so normally you go ahead and select a sound and then enter in steps for that sound. This thing's kind of quiet. But when you put it in flip mode, what you do is you go ahead and select a sound or select a step, and then you can enter in notes at that step. So it's actually quite good for melodies because you can much more readily see the increasing of your pitches or whatever. So you can say like, okay, I'm going to start at this pitch, I'm going to start low here, go up here, go up a little bit higher, and progress up through the scale as we go through. So it's just sort of an alternative way of step sequencing, and especially for instruments, I think it makes it a lot easier. And again, it's just available at the click of a button. So then another thing we can do is very quickly. Oh, I'm up in my session. Let me go up to my session here. So as you can see, when you're in clip view, you can see how the session is marked, much like the red box is in Ableton Live. This marks out an 8x4 clip grid. So within that 8x4, if I'm in my step sequencing mode, I can navigate to different clips in that and go ahead and create a clip and launch that clip, and then just start sequencing it. And then, if we want to, we can go ahead and add some effects on the fly. And then we can go back to our sequencing mode and again, just, choose another clip. And so this way you can really start hammering out different ideas, different beats, different lines, different melodies, all, really all in a very focused spot. And what else is interesting? So we have device page. Oh yeah, so I should actually cover what these do here. Bring me my device. So these are all tied to the macros in a given. This is probably a better example. Yeah, okay, so in Bitwig, you have the concept of macros and you have the concept of parameters. In Live, those things are sort of indeterminate, but they're separate in Bitwig. So you can see that now these are latched to these bottom knobs down here on my macros for this particular synth. I can go ahead and just very quickly tweak out all of my different parameters that I have on those macros, but I can also go to a different mode called device mode, and then you can see that these knobs down here changed, and now I can bank through the different parameters on the synthesizer itself. And if I want to, I can again hold down Shift and change what bank I'm modifying, or which device, and then within the device, what those knobs are latched to. So you can now see that those are in a completely different bank. And yeah, so then I can go to the effects and do the same thing. So I can go to this ladder filter and completely make it crazy. So that is devices versus macros, and we have those controls in different pages. And I am going to go ahead and can't reach it. This is very hard to do one-handed. Stop that clip. Okay, so that's sort of just an overview of the different modes and the sort of richness of, just this really sort of compact surface. That's pretty much the base that I wanted to show, what we have going on with that. Then we also have the Alias 8, which is really kind of a different beast altogether. Sort of that workflow that we have imagined for that is kind of similar with the OM-RGB and with the Control R. But this is another one of our controllers, and this is sort of like, whereas these things are kind of solutions, this is a problem. No, it's more of just sort of a utility tool, and it doesn't make any pretense about how it's going to be the creative focus of your studio necessarily. It's really just kind of like, well, you can see what it does, and you probably say it's a mixer, right? Which it can do. So what we have is actually this knob up here is a push button encoder, and it has different channels. And so you can see as I'm changing the channel, if we look up there, it's changing the mode, and as far as what all of these things are mapped to. So you can do sequencing, you can do device control, you can do mixing for your different tracks. So again, it's just kind of a utility thing that you can have that is a nice way of sort of focusing a piece of your work, not necessarily doing all of your work. Do you have a question?
Are there always the same number of modes, or is it like given your set?
The modes are set for the script and for the control, and but this one has like 7 different modes. This one has 4. And with the OM-RGB and the Control R, there is actually, I think it's just sort of all boiled down to 2 because they have a lot more controls, and you can sort of divvy up the tasks into different things. This one's kind of, the thing I like about this one is that you can actually do some kind of cool step sequencing with it in a very sort of classical way. So I can just I'm going to go ahead and try that out here. This is probably muted, yes. So I just flipped over to device mode. And let's go back to our classic sequencer. So what this is doing, this is an octave shift right here. So this gives you, puts you in a specific octave, and now I can enable steps on that octave. And then I can use the knobs to change the pitch. Classical step sequencer. Go ahead and bump up to a different octave. So it's just a horrible mess right now. It's great. But then we can just bump back to So that's quite different from what we started with, isn't it? So it really kind of puts a nice little like couple very groovy sort of like classical hardware sequencers, just, you know, in a couple of modes. We toss that in here. People pay thousands of dollars. What would you expect to pay? You know, so this is sort of, that was sort of just like the Alias 8 for us was sort of like a brainstorm session. Like, okay, what are all the sort of like little different scenarios that we could pack into this thing? This one, 7, is the sort of what we call momentary mode. And it's not too different, but from some of the other ones. This is sort of like a mixer up here, and these are sends, but then we also have some momentary sends. So just holding down a button instead of having your sends on a fader. I don't have the best examples for that on here, as they're all sort of reverbs and delays. So that's just sort of another way of controlling things, and hopefully can, you know, inspire people to, you know, try things out in a little different way. Because you can always just automate all that stuff and jam out with your Alias 8 on top of whatever else you have. So that is sort of an overview of, I would say, more of, you know, sort of workflow and then sort of a philosophy that we're trying to bring to controllers within the concept of this crazy DAW that we have with Bitwig. And one of the nice things about it is that, you know, like I said, all of the scripting is supported, and we've been able to work closely with Bitwig to do this stuff. For people who are into coding things, all of the scripting is done in JavaScript. So that is very nice because it's sort of a, you know, a lingua franca these days, as opposed to, you know, some of the lesser known things like Python, even though that's, you know, very heavily used. That's a little bit more of a
menu there, the
demanding.
scripting is all up there, the API and the script when you get
yeah. So I mean, like, it's all documented, and, you know, there's not really any sort of how-tos, but all of it's open, all of it's available for you to pull apart. And for something like, you know, the Alias 8 script, you can actually see what we've done as you know, broken up a library of prototypes, and then you can see how each mode is set up. It's pretty clear. You know, if you're a coder. Obviously, if you're a novel reader, it may not be the most obvious thing. So, you know, there's actually a good point for learning about these things and actually some support for it. And then I also kind of wanted to show some of the things that, you know, just sort of sonically that were interesting. This is something I cooked up this afternoon, and I don't... And this was something I just sort of created on the fly, just using my bass, using the sequencers, and started from scratch from a drum kit. Because, you know, all this stuff, most of the stuff that you're seeing from me is synthesizer stuff. That's kind of what I'm interested in. Just sort of, that's what I'm into, and it's also what really lends itself to these controllers, because you have all of these parameters available to you at your fingers. So, you know, you can really sort of explore a lot of sound very quickly. So with this set, I just used, you know, I wanted to create a little drum kit just using all of the little nice drum kit synthesizers that they have. And, you know, sort of thinking not just in terms of drums, but also, you know, creating some synthesizer hits that, you know, make cool sounds like this. You know, the effects chain on this is kind of interesting. Actually, this one that's really swirly and weird, I think, is it this clap? It appears to be. And what I have in this effects chain is, you know, again, some of those wet effects that he was discussing, you know, the feedback effects on the delay. So the sound itself isn't really that remarkable, but then it triggers this sort of distorted wash in the background. And we can sort of bump it up here. So yeah, it's just was sort of an opportunity to try to discover some of the things just by kind of going inside the boxes that Bitwig offers you. and trying to nest as many things and see what happens to, discover some different sounds and different possibilities for creating textures. So it's definitely an interesting sort of workflow in that regards, because it lends itself to just sort of pulling with the things that they have. And like you said, it's like it's what you make of it. It's not like, oh, well, it's got all these awesome presets. It's kind of not what it's about, though. I think, I'm sort of like, presets to me don't even really exist in this, because I've been working with it since the beta and I didn't have presets. So I was always just like, okay, so I have this synthesizer and it goes, wah, I got to get out of that quickly. And so, as we develop the scripts, it's like, okay, turn the knobs and see what I can get going. Oh, drop in some effects, put some things happening in this chain. And yeah, it's really a very different experience. So, it's funny because there's a lot of, oh, it's an Ableton clone dismissal of it, because somebody saw it on YouTube and it's like, yeah, no, it's not. It has a clip grid, and then from there it diverges quite quickly. Sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse, So, but it's definitely a very interesting tool, and I'm looking forward to seeing it grow and looking forward to seeing some of this modular stuff that comes out with it. So
yeah, I think for me, the first time that I fired it up, it was really in January. It was kind of late beta, and when I first got it, I really just wanted to break it. Just go through and figure out where everything was at, push it to its max, push it to its limits, see what it could do, what it couldn't do. Obviously, I've been able to use it for a long time. And I think the biggest recommendation that I can give for Bitwig Studio personally is that my intention was to break it, and I just wound up making music. I actually made a track.
Yeah, that's kind of true. Yeah,
and that's huge. That it strips away all the layers of, once you get it out of your head, it strips away all those layers of, well, I need this technology and this technology and this, or else I can't work. It's not about that. It's just about start making music. And it really, really, really excels.
Yeah, for like this, a lot of these sounds, when I was, I just threw in the, the synthesizer, and I'm like, well, okay, or not for this particular synthesizer, but like the drum kits, and I'm like, oh, I want to pan the snare, and there was no obvious way to do that. There was like, where's the pan knob for this particular block in my drum machine? And it's just like, well, what the hell is that? And it's like, oh, right, there's this thing called Tool, and it's just kind of an effect. And I think I have it, yeah, Tool. So they're okay. You just drop in Tool, and then you can actually, it's nice. It's actually kind of better. It's like a little channel strip that you just sort of plug in, and you have amplitude and pan, and you can actually add a little width to it, so stereo imaging in it.
And just a little secret thing that I didn't find until much later is if you look at the top of the track, Peter, where it says drum machine, there's a little arrow that's dropped down.
You can do the group.
It spills out all the individual tracks.
Oh, right,
in
yeah.
the drum machine one by one.
So there is a pan knob, I guess. But
it took me forever to find it. I saw it one day and I was like, oh crap.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, a lot of the stuff, like as far as controllers, I think you were asking about MIDI learn. There's definitely things like you can't do, like you can't just latch a note to a clip. But at the same time, you can drop in a sampler, and put a sound in a sampler and latch that to a MIDI note. So, it's kind of like, it kind of doesn't matter that you can't do it. You can.
Things like that with scripting?
Yeah, in the scripting, yeah, absolutely. So, like this is all, a clip grid, and you can navigate your clip grid, left and right, and up and down, and, just the same sort of deal. There's actually, and here's another sort of tweaky thing is master. Notice on the master, there's actually clips. So you can create automation clips for your master. So if I go ahead and, I should have sound someplace.
Yeah, I've also used it. You can actually go through and if you right-click on one of those clips, you can bounce the entire master audio onto a singular clip. So then you might go through and just like do a long time stretch for whatever, a bar or two to stretch something out on the master, and then launch back into your clip again. It's actually pretty effective. Any other questions? You guys?
No, I think I covered pretty much everything.
And there were some things where obviously there's a lot of stuff that you can go over with, really heavy with our controllers and with Bitwig as well too. Obviously, we have a finite amount of time that we can do things with. But definitely encourage you guys, if you haven't tried it already, check out the demo, like I said, bitwig.com. Obviously all of your product line and controllers are up at.
lividinstruments.com.
Lividinstruments.com. And all of Nektar's controller are at nektartechnology.com. As Peter said, he's doing all the videos on the Livid side. I'm actually doing a lot of the videos on the Nektar and Bitwig side as well too. I've just been on the road for the last 4 weeks, so I get back to work on Monday, and I've got a pile of video work that I got to do. So like Peter said, you'll be hearing his voice and my voice a lot as well too as time comes. But there's already a lot of really great user content as well too online, since like I said, a lot of people have jumped on the Bitwig bandwagon and have been using it now for the last week and a half or so. I was actually lucky enough, there was this guy that got it 2 days early in Atlanta, and he has this video, he's super excited, he got it, and he was in Atlanta, and actually was in Atlanta, and I got to meet him, he came out to the show, said hi, so I definitely...
Yeah, I've actually got an email from somebody who's like, yeah, I've switched everything over to Bitwig from Live, and I was like, are you crazy? You know, this is a guy he was a touring artist, you know, and, you know, he had a question about our controllers with it, and I was just like, whoa, that's a kind of a ballsy move, you know, switching over, like, obviously he's between tours right now, but... You know, this is a 1.0 software.
Yeah, that's what's crazy. This is 1.0, and all the things that we've been able to incorporate in 1.0. I mean, you look online in Twitter, and you know, Deadmau5 has been tweeting about it every now and then. So has Datsik as well too. Has been talking good things about it. So you know, there's definitely a lot of hype behind it, and I think that you know, it's real. The hype is real, and it shows in what we have in version 1. So definitely check out the demo. Definitely check out all of our controllers, you know, if you have a chance. They're really amazing ways to go hands-on with it and get... For me, yeah, I'm a musician, I'm an instrumentalist. I like to be in front of my instrument, you know, and that's where the Nektar controllers and the Livid controllers come into play.
How does video integrate with it?
Currently, in version 1, we don't have video in version 1.
Can you send any kind of messages to control video from there?
You can send out MIDI. So whatever you can do with MIDI, then you can do otherwise. And it's the way it handles that, as far as anything external, is that there are 2 actually plugins. One's called
External Instrument.
External Instrument, which will route anything MIDI into that, and route. If you're using it to go to a synth, for example, it'll route audio back into that same track.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another one that is, I forget the name of it. Hardware and hardware effects. Hardware instrument and hardware effects. So you can, if you have any external effects, you can route back in as well. But it sounds like in your situation, instrument would be the way to go, since you can send MIDI out by that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you saying this is just MIDI beat clock and not MCC?
For now. Wow, come on.
For the scripting, what type of input and output do you have? Can you communicate MIDI with the scripting?
Yeah, it's all MIDI. And I see that there is, in the API, that there is some sort of network stuff that's starting to be built out, but it's not really, we haven't cracked it yet. Because we did ask them about that, and we didn't really get really an answer. I don't think it's mature yet. But there is like socket stuff that's in there, but we don't know how to use it. So, because we do want to use it, just for other uses, like all of this stuff that, you know, all these messages that pop up, like mode, send page, like I have some stuff that I've been working on that would send that to, you know, a screen, right? So, which would be great, you know, to be able to just sort of notify all your set stuff onto, you know, a sort of responsive web page. And so it's slowly coming together, but it's sort of been sort of like a side project for me. But it can be an iPad or whatever. So yeah, we do have some of that in our live script, but again, it's not really mature. So,
a couple more questions we're running short.
I just had one. I saw in there somewhere it had like HOSC or NOSC, and I didn't know if it was in the MIDI area, and I didn't know if you guys were actually going to be implementing some sort of OSC.
Maybe long term, but once again, it's a more only time will tell sort of thing. You know, any of these things are, you know, comes down to priority, right? And what's going to be immediate, if there's anything, little niggles here and there that need to be fixed versus actually feature implementation, we'll kind of get there when we get there, I suppose, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think you see OSC in here every once in a while, but that's oscillator.
No, it was in a separate section. It was near MIDI, and it was like HOSC, and it was its own thing.
Oh, okay.
I didn't really dig into it past that, but it was.
Yeah,
it could have been, could have not been, but it wasn't oscillator.
And once again, it's the beauty of where we're at right now, especially with version 1, is that all the cards are still on the table. You know, it's just a matter of time and resources to get those things in there. Question?
API framework access again, is that all JavaScript or Python? Or?
I think it's all JavaScript.
It's all JavaScript, yeah. So control surface scripting guide. which I don't know how.
You just find open PDF.
Yeah, that's a PDF, and then there's the API, which is just sort of, you know, all of the classes and then different methods and stuff can be accessed, and some other parameters.
One more question. Anybody else?
What format the virtual instruments is supported?
VST, and then obviously anything internal with Bitwig. So anything VST or Bitwig wise.
It doesn't support AU?
Does not support AU.
Oh, okay.
Probably because you're on 3 different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Windows, Linux, and Mac, obviously. So.
It makes sense to just stick with BST.
But once again, I never say never because you know, we're just at the beginning. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Very much like to thank Pyramind for hosting me here once again. I think this institution is really cool, and until I came here for the first time, I had never seen anything like it in my whole life.
What I think really separates us from other people who teach is that we are outrageously passionate about what we do, and especially in electronic music.
Since coming to Pyramind, I've discovered electronic music, and you know, San Francisco being a mecca for underground electronic music opened up so many doors for me, and kind of blew my mind.
We cover everything from absinthe to contact. When people get to the mind-melting level, we get into modular synthesis.
Everything about native instruments, everything about Logic synths down to the finest detail. We learned it all.
The fundamentals of understanding how things work, that's just essential. But then beyond that, there's so much more, and that's where it gets into just a lot of the artistic side of like the creative approach of why you do something, not just how.
There's a lot of schools that just, you know, they focus on the technicality of recording music, but I wanted something that would foster creativity and really help me develop as an artist as well.
Each of our genre-specific programs comes in 4 levels. There's a basic, an advanced, a professional, and then a master's level. And the master's level is, of course, everything we do. It's the largest and most powerful programs that we can create for you.